All right. Deckard and I thought we'd have a little bit of fun and have a impromptu podcast, I think. We used to do stuff like this. We used to call it a Cup of Linux Lounge or Linux Outlaws or something like that. Well, we don't have enough people here. Edge, unfortunately, couldn't join us, so it is what it is. How you doing, Deckard?
I'm not too bad. How about yourself?
Oh, wonderful. And I'll be doing even better when we rip off all those toenails and take you for that 10-mile walk for not showing up for the news and nonsense report. Rah! You feeling better?
Lots better. Still a little bit sick, but well enough to start doing shows again.
Alrighty then. Okay. Well, what are we going to talk about today? Let's talk about MD5 sums and different hashes. I figured it was time that we, made a show to address this because a lot of Linux distributions out there today are still using MD5 sums, and there are people out there that are saying that MD5 really isn't that secure. So we want to dispel some myths about this because for some things, yes, it is insecure. Wouldn't you agree, Deckard? But there are other reasons where it would actually be valid.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, MD5 is no longer secure anymore in the sense that if you're building a website and you want to use checksums to check whether or not the user's password is correct, MD5 is definitely not the algorithm to be using for that because of two main reasons. One, collisions are possible in MD5 a lot more than what they used to be. So in the 90s, our computers just weren't fast enough to find these collisions. But as computers got faster and faster, we found that collisions exist. And a collision essentially means if I have one file and I get an MD5 out of it, and I have another file and I get an MD5 out of that, and the two MD5s are the same, we have a collision because those two files are supposed to be different, but the MD5 says they're the same. And that's mostly due to because the bit length of the MD5 itself. And the second reason is MD5s are so easily calculated nowadays that large databases are filled with the reverse of MD5. So if I put in hello into the algorithm, the MD5 algorithm, I would get out a string of characters. And somebody would have those string of characters and say, this string means hello in their database. Therefore, the passwords are easily hackable. But when it comes to file verification, when it comes to making sure that the file that you've downloaded is actually complete, MD5 is still valid. It's still a way of making sure that the file that you received is the file you're supposed to get. So with all due respect to everyone, MD5 shouldn't be used anymore in regards to passwords, but it's perfectly fine when using file verification.
Now, something that where MD5 is concerned, there is something that people who are using these MD5s do. It's called salting. Okay, and I'm sure you've heard of that. And that's supposed to be a little bit more secure, but that's not even perfect either. But that's only when you're using MD5 with passwords, right?
That's right. So salting an algorithm means we're going to take the string hello and run it through the MD5 algorithm, but we're going to add in an extra little bit of information to try and scramble it up a little bit. So it's basically a two-factor analysis of the algorithm. So if I have hello in a database where I can reverse the MD5 sum back into the string that it was originally, I would also have to have the salt characters. So I could say hello and, for example, password is my salt. They would have to have both of those strings in order to figure out what the algorithm or the checksum actually means.
Exactly. And an example that many websites would use, for instance, is the user's email address and their password, and they would use that in a salt because then they're getting like more than 25 characters and that sort of thing. So really using MD5, and this is in the context that we were talking about where MD5 really, isn't secure. Now, we've been talking about this with a number of people in the community, and unfortunately not everybody could make it today, but there were some very good points brought up, okay? One of them being the file security itself, okay? And let me give you an example, Deckard, of the procedure that I basically go through when I'm making a release. Okay.
All right.
Basically, I have all of my when I'm building a Linux distribution, I build it in a virtual machine so that I don't mess up my own desktop, and I assign all 4 of my computer cores to that virtual machine, and I'm basically dedicating my computer's resources to the VM so I can work in there. And so basically what happens is Manjaro Tools builds the ISO for me based on the parameters that I have set. And usually it'll take about a good 2 hours to do that. And then once it has compiled that ISO image, then it will generate an MD5 sum. Now, what I'll do is I'll move from my build machine. So I'm taking that ISO from the build machine and I'm moving it to my hard drive. And when I move that file, I compare it to the MD5 sum then, after I've moved it out of the virtual machine. Because I've had problems with file transfers from virtual machines to the hard drive, to the host computer. I've had that issue happen. So it's always smart. Every time you move the file from point A to point B, and then later to point C, you need to check that file sum each and every time to ensure that the data, transferred correctly. And then once it's on the hard drive, then I run it through some tests. I want to make sure that the ISO image boots up correctly, that the image actually does install, that the installers and the software work as expected. Those are very critical because you really don't want to release a distribution that isn't going to work for people. So, extra quality control and time goes into that. Once I'm satisfied that the ISO image is working, then it's time to connect to Sourceforge using secure file transfer protocol and upload the image, which is terribly slow. If any of you guys know of a good file hosting service that's a little bit faster, because we are looking for alternatives to Sourceforge, absolutely. But the thing is, Sourceforge is reputable for the most part, and I never had any reason to question what they do with my data. I upload the image and then I go into my account, I look in the file folder, there is an information circle there, I click on it. After the file is uploaded, they have given me a SHA-1 sum, which is also, I believe it's also just as bad as MD5, and they give you an MD5 sum as well. So you've got 2 of them that you can check your upload against, but I've already got the MD5 sum, so I'm satisfied with that. Okay, I didn't give Sourceforge an MD5 sum. They generated one automatically, and I compared the 2 numbers, and they matched. So that tells me that the file transfer has been successful. That means I don't need to keep that ISO image on my hard drive anymore, and I can now clear that off my drive, so that I can do other things, because I don't want all this stuff storing. It's released now. Then I post an MD5 sum on the website. The thing is, though, Sourceforge doesn't do SHA-256, SHA-512, or any other GPG verifications. They don't offer that.
Yeah, so here's a good point, and people are getting a little bit confused between all the different checksum algorithms or hashing algorithms. So MD5 is old school. Nobody should be really using MD5 for any extraordinary purposes. General file verification to say, yep, this is the file that I was supposed to get, that's okay. But when you're dealing with large files, such as an operating system, like a 1.7 gigabyte file, which I believe COL is around now, is 1.7 gigs. Checksum algorithms can also be used for a different purpose, and that is to make sure that the file that you downloaded is actually complete. Now, because MD5 is so old school, it only checks certain bits of the file. So for example, if we have a 1.7 gigabyte file, we're going to break that up into sections, and we're going to take out a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and then run it through the algorithm. Now, MD5 was never really designed to use 1.7 gigabyte files. So if you really want to make sure that all of the file is exactly the way it should be, you'll probably want to jump up to an SHA-256 or an SHA-512 checksum. Probably an SHA-512 is the better option. It's going to take more time to compute. It's going to give you a longer string, but it's going to check more of the file to make sure everything's okay. These sorts of things are by default enabled in most file transfer programs, most of the Linux ones I know. I don't know anything about the Windows 10 file transfer program, but I assume it has the same thing, as well as BitTorrent. So BitTorrent also has checking of the entire file to make sure it's correct. So in the hierarchy of things, MD5 and SHA1 should really only be used for basic file verification. Then we jump up to SHA 256 and 512, which are the modern standards. 256 being the one that most websites are using now in conjunction with salting, 512 being the one that most people are starting to switch over preemptively just to stay ahead of the curve. But there is a big difference between SHA, MD5, and GPG. They're two completely different algorithms. GPG is an encryption algorithm. MD5 and SHA are checksum algorithms. So MD5 and SHA will take the bits of the file and make sure that it's the same. The GPG stands for GNU Privacy Guard, and that's an encryption algorithm. So if I wanted to send a piece of information from me to Spatry, I would use GPG to encrypt that information so that, for example, Edge, who just popped in, wouldn't see the traffic coming through. So they're really different. GPG file verification doesn't make any sense. It just logically, I don't get it. I don't understand what they're trying to accomplish here. Now, if I were to take
possibly to ensure that the file hasn't been tampered with in some way.
Oh, absolutely. You could do that. But the way that GPG works is you'll have a key and I'll have a key. If I wanted to send information to you, I would have to have your public key. So if everyone was sharing keys, then that's a great way of doing it. I could send it through that way just to make sure that everything's, going privately and everything's going okay. But you'd also have to use a checksum algorithm as well to make sure that what you receive is what you were supposed to receive.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, so at any rate, I can see why now a lot of distribution providers out there are still providing MD5 sums. I know Manjaro's doing it. I'm doing it too. And there are a number of other distribution providers that are still providing MD5 because basically, if you're downloading a file from supposedly a reputable source, okay, then really all you need to verify that file is an MD5 sum, and doing an MD5 check is a lot quicker than if you would be doing a SHA 256 or a SHA 512 or even going even further than that. And, I don't know about you, Deckard, but I've been downloading files from Sourceforge for 15 plus years. They've been around for a long time. And Sourceforge has never given me reason to question how they handle my data until Edge brought something up earlier today. How you doing, Edge?
Doing good. How about you?
Okay. Edge brought up and he says, okay, well, guess what Sourceforge has done to some Windows programs that are out there? Sourceforge attempted to contact the developers of these projects, okay, and didn't get any word back from them. So they assumed this project, one of them was the Windows version of the GIMP. Ed shared the article with me. Okay, so they don't hear nothing from the developer, where he is, where he's gone, whatever. Now, mind you, this isn't official GIMP because according to the article, the GIMP distributes from their website and through Linux repositories and that sort of thing. But the person who is maintaining the Windows version kept all of his files up on Sourceforge. And what happened was Sourceforge decided, okay, well, we're going to take this over. And the installer for this program, we're now going to put some ads to features we think may be of use to the SourceForge community, people who come to our website and download these applications. We're going to offer them Norton antivirus. We're going to offer them this. We're going to offer them that. Along with their download. And we've seen this in software when we were using Windows before kicking it to the curb. We've seen that happen, okay? So Edge brought this to my attention, and so that tells me file tampering. Give us some more info on that, Edge.
Well, it's a matter of you don't know what they're doing to your files. And you said earlier, well, there's no proof that they've done it to ISOs, but they could. They could do a register, for instance, if you have Windows and you're downloading this to put it on your machine and get rid of Windows, they could put exe extractor in front of that ISO. Now they probably haven't, but they could. So it's not really that they are, it's just potential. The potential being there and that they've done it before is a little unsettling.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Deckard.
I've actually seen this for quite a while, and back when I was working as a technician for Staples, I was taken back because some of the free programs that people used to be able to get were taken over by what they call the Sourceforge installer, which is basically an installation program that people are using that when you go through the installation, it'll say, oh, do you want to install X, Y, and Z along with your program? And it will be quote unquote Norton antivirus or PC cleaner something or other. It's basically a bunch of malware that's installed alongside whatever program it is you might want to install. I did a quick search for some of them, and if you just search for SourceForge install, you just see a bunch of different articles on it. And personally, I boycotted a lot of projects from SourceForge and built it through source code rather than download it from them, just to say that's not cool. That's not okay in any way, shape, or form. And the biggest thing is these people are doing it for the kickbacks because they want money. Well, there's other ways to go about it than doing that kind of crap.
Okay. Well, at any rate, we haven't seen anything physically yet, but, now that we've got the red, now that Edge has set up the red flag, I will be looking into other options for secure and safe transmission of the Cup of Linux edition's data, our OS and that sort of thing. But in the meantime, obviously, our project that we have here isn't abandoned. It never was abandoned, and I don't see any. I can't see what SourceForge could possibly stand to gain by tampering with the ISO image and then falsifying the MD5 sum. I can't see what they could possibly stand to gain by doing something like that, especially on on a project that really isn't getting that many downloads. I mean, we've had 30,000 people download a Cup of Linux edition, but these are not people that are using this as their daily driver. This is a vanity distro. Most people who love Manjaro and are using it regularly, they downloaded the net install and they built it from the ground up themselves, and it's running exactly how they want it with only the software they want. They're not running it with my silly little configurations and stuff like that. They built their own. Any thoughts?
It's all about the money. They get kickbacks from all those advertisements they put into that installer. So, 30,000 people to you might not seem like a lot, but when you factor in 30,000 people times 3 ads per installer, plus the extra kickbacks that these people get when they're coaxed into paying for software that's not even legitimate, SourceForge could make a pretty penny off that.
Okay, so we will. At any rate, very soon we're going to be looking at a different method for distributing Manjaro Cup of Linux Edition. For the time being, though, I haven't got any reason to believe that SourceForge is maliciously tampering with my ISO. Obviously, when I go to make my next build, I actually download my ISO from SourceForge and install it in a virtual machine and work off of that one. Believe it or not, that's exactly how I do it when I want to build the next release, because I don't keep it stored locally anymore. Once I've released it, it's gone. I wipe it off the hard drive. I even get rid of the virtual machine, because I've already got my notes, I already got my configs saved. I back up the important stuff, but what do I need to have 20 gigs of my hard drive space used up for when I can install something cool like a game or something like that? So, I'll actually download my own ISO that I uploaded to SourceForge and then edit it. And then obviously, if I were to see that they had injected something in there, then of course, I would be plastering that all over YouTube. I'd make a video of it. I uploaded this image, and here SourceForge injected this botnet in there, and they did this and did that. I can't see what they would possibly be able to gain by altering Linux distribution. I think it's more the Windows software side of things.
Yeah, two things. Thing one, they're really targeting exe files right now. So if your project doesn't contain any exe files, you're fairly safe. Though I won't go as far to say as you're completely safe, because who knows, they could download the ISO and start throwing some stuff in there. I wouldn't put it past them, because clearly they've lost their minds. But thing number two, people have been kept saying, how can I be sure that the file that I'm downloading is the file that I get? and sums are a great way of doing that. However, you have to post the sum somewhere. So if it's posted onto SourceForge, take for instance Linux Mint people, the reason why they were caught was their checksum wasn't changed on their download site. But if the hacker did get in and change the download or the checksum on the download site, no one would know because the sums would still match up and everything would be okay. The best way of making sure that the file that you're getting is actually the file that you want is through BitTorrent, because the checksums are distributed through a bunch of people, mainly the original seeders, who will let you know whether or not the checksum that you're getting is actually the checksum that you're supposed to be using. You also won't have to deal with poorly downloaded files that aren't complete. So BitTorrent's the best way to go, in my opinion, because it's seeded by a bunch of different people, so you don't have to really have one central server hosting the file, and it's the most secure method of sharing files right now.
Okay, now something else I wanted to bring up. That's one reason why I don't self-host my ISO images at cupoflinux.com, just in case some hacker decides they want to break into my server, okay, and then alter those ISO images and then edit the MD5 sums, because they'd be able to do that if they were to actually be able to hack into the site and that sort of thing. So that's one reason why I don't self-host. I've got the ISO images over on SourceForge and the MD5s on my side of the site. So then that's two places they got to hack, pretty much to do that. But something else that was brought up, and my buddy Zeus, who is our resident devil's advocate here, brought up a very interesting point about security and about downloading images such as this. Well, what about, when that file is being transferred from SourceForge to your computer, okay? And what about that file being, intercepted by somebody? But still, I don't see how somebody would be able to, be able to edit an ISO image as you're downloading the thing, inject it with botnets, and then still be able to have this thing, pass an MD5 check.
Well, that's actually, you might think that's something that'll be very, very difficult to do, but when you really think about how someone would go about that, all you would really have to do is either work for the ISP or know where the junction boxes are. The main thing that's protecting you right now is, in order to insert a botnet into the ISO file, they would have to look specifically for that ISO file. So unless people are going around saying, oh, I want to make sure that Zeus's download file of Cup of Linux has a virus in it, then you're relatively safe with that. But what I used to run is a program called TCP Traceroute.
Zeus. He's picking on you. He's picking on you. He's here listening. You do realize that.
But the program TCP Traceroute sends out TCP packets to all the servers between you and a destination. So I used to send TCP traceroutes to 8.8.8.8, which is Google's public DNS. And it would send me a list of all of the IP addresses and host names of the servers between me and the public DNS. And if I see anything different, I'll know that something has happened between here and that site, and I should probably look into who exactly it is. 9 times out of 10, it's Bell upgrading their infrastructure, but it's a great way to make sure that you have your tinfoil hat secure on your head.
And speaking of
go ahead. I think for the most part, in regards to the whole thing, it wouldn't be done as you said it would be. It wouldn't be like a real-time thing. It would be where someone looks at that MD5 sum, does the cracking beforehand, then does some sort of man-in-the-middle attack, and instead of pointing you towards the original, they point you towards the one that they want you to download on another server that has the same MD5 sum.
Yeah, you could do it that way too.
And this brings us to the way you protect yourself from this. And I just keep saying this all the time, and I even have a banner up on my website for them. For private internet access, internet security is your responsibility. You're the one that's accessing the internet. You're the one that's going to these websites, downloading these ISO images and that sort of thing. It is up to you to protect yourself. And one of the best ways of protecting yourself is by using a VPN. And I recommend private internet access. I use them myself. They are also the sponsor of cupoflinux.com. When you connect to the internet through a VPN, all of your data is encrypted. So you can be at Dunkin' Donuts surfing their free Wi-Fi, and somebody using a packet sniffer isn't going to be able to see nothing but gibberish coming out of your machine. Any thoughts on that, guys?
Well, you know what? That is the best way, in my mind, to make sure that all of your traffic is secure is through a VPN. And right now, they're 52% off. So it's $3.33 a month, or $40 for a whole year. $40 for a whole year of all of your traffic being completely secure. You really can't beat that. Even the
Absolutely.
best VPN companies out there, I haven't seen that low of a price.
And if you click the banner at cupoflinux.com for the private internet access, you're actually helping to keep the site going. So it's very good. All right. Well, we're almost at the half-hour mark. So I want to give each of you guys a chance for some final thoughts. We'll start with you, Deckard.
Well, overall, I mean, I can't be more in support of BitTorrent as I currently am. BitTorrent's probably the best way to do any sort of file sharing in my mind, but it really doesn't hurt to use checksums. Just make sure you're using the right checksums for the right things. MD5, SHA1 for your file verifications. Use SHA256 or 512 if you really want to get in depth. And if you're a web developer, please, for the love of God, use SHA256 or 512. Ditch MD5. It's dead. Leave it alone.
Edge.
Yeah, I really agree with what Deckard said, but to extrapolate one part further, there's also metalinkers. And metalinkers are sort of the go-between for FTP, HTTP, BitTorrent, and all that. And they allow you to have the redundancy that you need. Say maybe the BitTorrent, the tracker might not be up all the time. It goes down. You want to have some sort of redundancy, so you want an HTTP or an FTP location as well, but you can prioritize BitTorrent over those files. And it allows redundancy, and it does not stop. In terms of if your HTTP download stops, it is able to intelligently continue on another server for you.
All right. Well, we have run out of time, folks. My final thought is, for the time being, the MD5 sum suits my purpose just fine. At least for making sure that my data has been transferred to where it's being served from. And then we have that sum available so that you guys can verify that the file you downloaded with good quality. So that's why we provide the MD5 sum, but we will be looking into other options for hosting. We're still looking for a maintainer for the Manjaro Cup of Linux edition, and if one of you security buffs out there want to take over COL for us and maintain it, then you guys can generate any kind of hashes you want. If you want to do GPG keys and all that fancy stuff, I think I put enough work into the distro rather than having to generate all these keys. Because really, for right now, the Cup of Linux edition is a one-man show for right now, and geez, that's a lot of work putting that together. So, I think MD5 is okay. And I think the discussion that we've just had here pretty much satisfies the reasoning behind why we use it and why you shouldn't be using it for anything else other than file integrity checks. Well, I don't know what we're going to have our next Cup of Linux Lounge discussion, but just hang out with us here at cupoflinux.com in the Mumble chat room. You never know what's going to happen from day to day. We've got a bunch of great people to hang out with to discuss your passion for Linux. So come on over to cupoflinux.com and have some fun. Peace out.